Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Recently, I was sitting down with a good friend of mine, new friend named Paul. He's a real estate guy. And we were talking, and he goes, "You know a lot about health. What's my body made of?" And I said, "You know what? That's a really interesting question." So I'd like to discuss that on this episode, showing you why certain foods and nutrients are so essential for human life. When you go to pharmacy school, you study inorganic chemistry. That is general chemistry, where you learn things about all these different chemicals that you can put together and make explosions. That's interesting. But organic chemistry is the chemistry of life. It's carbon-based. So when you're looking at general chemistry, you're not looking at carbon-based organisms. Organic chemistry is very complex, by the way. You learn about all of these elements that combine with carbon to make humans. So welcome to my episode, What Are We Made Of? Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Invite Health. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe. Please leave us a review. I'd love to know how we're doing. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. The information on this episode is linked in the episode description, so let's get going. So I'm going to wing this because each element is so important. We're mostly water. We really are. About 62% of our body is water. So it's the major component in our blood, in our lymphatic tissue, which is kind of a shadow circulatory system. We actually did an episode on this. It's involved with moving toxins out of the body, moving fatty soluble nutrients around the body, moving immune system nutrients around the body. But also the cerebral spinal fluid that floats and feeds our brain and detoxifies our brain, mostly water. Inside our eyes, the whites of our eyes, is water and protein, water and collagen. The synovial fluid of our joints, even though there's not a lot of it, the major component is water. In our skin, water is attached to the hyaluronic acid component of the collagen in our skin. But every one of our cells is loaded with water. It's the major component of our cells. So we're 62% water. Now, this is going to be confusing. We're 16% protein. We're about 20 to 30% collagen, which is a protein. So how can that happen? I'll tell you in a minute. Protein makes us function. It's the number one component in our body. We use amino acids from protein to make neurotransmitters for the brain and for the digestive tract and for our muscles, etc. We use protein to make hormones like insulin and insulin-type growth factor 1 and insulin-type growth factor 2. We use protein to make the enzymes that makes everything work so fast. People think enzymes are just for digesting food, but there's enzymes that make everything function in the human body. We also use protein to make our DNA and our chromosomes. Now, how can we be just 16% protein, but this is confusing to me even, 20 to 30% collagen? That's all our connective tissue. Because we're also made out of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. And a lot of that is in the collagen that we're made out of. So even though we're only 16% protein, a lot of that protein goes towards making collagen, which also incorporates all these other ingredients. Now, this is important. We've restricted major sources of protein in our food. We're not eating steaks and pork chops as much. We're not eating eggs the way we used to. You need a source of protein. And of course, there's good vegetable sources of protein. Legumes like soy foods and peas and lentils and beans are a good source of protein. If you're an ovo-lacto vegetarian, you can have the eggs. You can have dairy, like a really good organic yogurt, low-fat yogurt. It's a good source of protein. But at a certain point, you have to start using collagen. Because like I said, your body's 20 to 30% collagen, depending on the report you read. But that collagen holds you together. Ingredients from collagen, the peptides that make your ligaments and tendons, that hold your bones and your joints and your muscles together. The meniscus that shield your knees. These are like pie-shaped wedges under your knees that support your knees. There's also menisci in your jaw. Bones are 36% collagen. That's what calcium attaches to. Your joint cartilage is about 67% collagen. Your skin is about 70% collagen. Pretty much the rest of it is sulfur and hyaluronic acid. So that's basically your skin. So as you grow older, you're making less and less collagen, it's important to get a source of high-quality collagen. You have to make sure it's rich in collagen peptide, and you want grass-fed collagen. Now, getting past the oxygen and carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen, which are components of the other parts of the body. Your body is about 16% fat, for instance, your brain. It's actually lipids. It's not a pure fat. Fat is made out of carbon and hydrogen, but the fats in your brain are more complex than that. They're called lipids. They're not just plain fat. So there's fats from fish oils and fats from vegetables. We call those omega-6 fatty acids. But in there are minerals like phosphorus. There are vitamins like the B vitamin choline. There are amino acids like serine. So there's all these components in the brain. So when you say X amount of the body is fat, 16%, it's more complex than that because it's involved with making all these complex structures. The body's only 1% carbohydrate, but that matters because carbohydrates are needed to create your cartilage, your joint tissue. They're needed to create the lining of your intestines. They're needed for a lot of things, but it's 1% carbohydrate. You're 6% minerals, and this we're going to fly with a little bit. The number one mineral in your body is calcium. 1.5% of your body is calcium, 1.5%. However, most of that calcium is in your bone. 99% of the calcium is in your bone. Outside of your bone, calcium is used for nerve function, muscle function, controlling the rate of the heartbeat, energy activities, enervating activities. After calcium comes phosphorus. Phosphorus is really important. 1.2% of your body is phosphorus, but it's easy to get from the diet. Whenever you eat vegetables and beans and stuff like that, you get plenty of phosphorus. You never have to take a phosphorus supplement, really. Phosphorus, even though it's only 1.2% of your body, that's energy. Your body runs on something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine tri, 3 of these molecules that incorporate phosphate. And to release energy, for you to wink, for you to think, for you to blink, for you to hear, for you to see, for you to digest your food, for you to go to the bathroom, for you to detoxify, for you to sweat, you release one of those phosphate groups and you become adenosine diphosphate. And that's interesting. According to some research, you use 165 pounds of ATP a day. But don't worry, if you're 150 pounds, you won't disappear. The body is very effective at recycling that energy. Your body's only 0.4% potassium. But let me go back to phosphorus. I forgot one other thing. Phosphorus is involved with phosphate groups. Phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylainositol, phosphatidylethanolamine, and phosphatidylserine. These make the structures of your cells. So phosphorus is also incorporated into your cellular structure. Every cell of your body does not have a hard outside. It has a malleable bilipid layer. And very core to that are these phosphate groups. They help prevent it from decaying, and they help your cells interact with each other. In other words, without phosphorus, there's no memory, there's no brain, there's no function. There's no life. Without phosphorus, there's no life. On the outside of your cell, there's phosphatidylcholine. It has a tail going to the inner leaf of the cell. And on the inner layer, there's phosphatidylserine, and their tails oppose each other. And they create millions and millions of vibrations per minute. And this is actually the life of your cell. So phosphorus, really important, but easy to get. Now potassium, it's 0.4% of your body. But it's a really important electrolyte. It's on the inside of your cell, and sodium and chloride, salt, is on the outside of your cell, and that's how the cells work. If you lack potassium, you're very fatigued. You don't have any energy. You don't have that electrical function. The body works on electrical function. You don't have that electrical charge like a battery, like the ever-ready battery, you know, that pink bunny, and you stop going. So the potassium comes out, the sodium's going in, they're opposing each other, and that's a lot to do with our life. So the potassium, if you lack it, and you need a lot of potassium every day. You don't retain it. You need almost 5 grams of potassium every day, like a teaspoon worth of potassium. If you lack potassium, you lose muscle because the body becomes increasingly acidic. Now, that's really important for older people because they're already losing muscle according to age. So you give them enough potassium. It's easy to get potassium in your diet because you find it in vegetables and fresh fruit. You get potassium. So if you're getting your 5 servings a day, 3 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fresh fruit, you're getting your potassium. And here's the thing. According to NANES, the survey done periodically by the U.S. government, only 2% of Americans get sufficient potassium from their food. So if you lack potassium, you lose muscle because your body becomes acidic. If you lack potassium, you lose bone. And I'll tell you why. Your blood has to be slightly alkaline. So there's acid and alkaline. Alkaline is also called basic. Acid, basic, or acid alkaline. But with the human body, we tend to call it acid alkaline. The pH of the blood has to be something like 7.3 to 7.4, a very narrow range. If it goes down and becomes a little acidic, you could go into a coma. It's called ketoacidosis or lactic acidosis, and you could die. Your organs shut down. You go into a coma, you're done. It's more common in diabetics to become acidic. Increasingly, thankfully, diabetics are surviving their diabetic comas, the ketoacidotic comas. So the body has to keep the blood in a slightly alkaline state. If you're eating all acid foods, sugary foods, carbohydrates, etc., lots of protein, and you're not getting your potassium and your magnesium from your vegetables and fruits, your blood can become acidic, so the body borrows the minerals from your bones. So you're losing bone. But the second thing that happens is those minerals have to leave the body, and because you're so acidic, the urine is more acidic. This makes the minerals congeal into crystals, and you form kidney stones. So you need to get that potassium from your vegetables and fruit. Even though you're only 0.4% potassium, it is so important to your muscles, to your heart, to your blood pressure, to lower your risk of stroke and heart attack, and, of course, to maintain your muscles and to maintain that delicate, slightly alkaline pH of your blood to protect your bones. Your 0.2% sulfur. Now, that's important, though. Sulfur mixes with different ingredients to make bone and joint tissue and skin, hair and nails, etc. But sulfur also is used to remove toxins from your body. Organic sulfur is so important. The liver and kidneys use a lot of sulfur, especially the liver, to break down toxins, make them more water soluble, and remove them from the body. So when you lack sulfur, not a good thing. Now, to sum it up, your body has other elements, just tiny amounts, and we don't even know the biological function of some of these. Like there's some germanium in there, bis-carboxyl germanium sesquioxide. There's some silver. There's even bismuth. There's even a little gold in your body. There's also even radioactive substances, like there's a tiny bit of uranium and radium. And don't let that scare you. There's a lot of evidence now that people who live in locations that are naturally producing a little bit of radioactivity tend to live longer and have lower cancer rates than people that live in areas with a lower signature for natural radioactivity. We're not talking about the radioactivity from Fukushima. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about a nuclear power plant accident. We're talking about the natural elements in stones. So the thing is, there's also elements of the body that don't belong there. They are actively toxic. Like even in the cleanest soil, you get a little bit of arsenic. But of course, arsenic is used in chickens if they're not organic as an antibiotic. And it's used in that green wood in the playgrounds. And you could get arsenic contamination in wells. And they find in places where there's a lot of arsenic in drinking water that there's a higher incidence of lung cancer and liver cancer and damage to the skin, etc. Not a good thing. Mercury came out of like coal, burning coal in power plants. Very toxic to the human body. Bad for the brain. It could trigger a heart attack. A little bit of lead, not a good thing. Aluminum. Now that's interesting. Aluminum is interesting because it's the third most common element in the Earth's crust. But now they're finding that aluminum is involved with Alzheimer's disease. They actually started finding that out many, many decades ago, but it's back into prominence. They're looking at it again, and there's more and more evidence building that aluminum's involved with Alzheimer's disease. The problem is they put aluminum in a lot of drugs. Like a lot of drugs that are antacids for heartburn, they have aluminum in them. I would recommend avoiding that. And of course, deodorants that are antiperspirants that prevent you from sweating, they work with aluminum. It's the aluminum that prevents you from sweating. So we are contaminated with aluminum. Another contaminant is titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide is super white colored. They use titanium dioxide to make shaving cream look white. You know, when you whitewash your picket fence, that's titanium dioxide making it look white. The problem is it's also used in drugs, and some of the supplement companies crazily use titanium dioxide to hide the ingredients in their product. Not good. There's evidence that titanium dioxide is a heavy metal and it's kind of crystalline, and it can irritate and really damage the lining of your intestines. In fact, recent data shows that in diabetics, there's some titanium dioxide getting into their pancreas and damaging the insulin-releasing cells. They're called beta cells, and they can't release insulin, and that's one of the reasons why they have diabetes. So this is what you're made of, and I hope it was enjoyable. You really have to pay attention to your food groups for your body health. You need that potassium to help prevent high blood pressure, to keep your blood slightly alkaline so you don't lose bone, you don't lose muscle, and you don't develop kidney stones, and that you keep your blood pressure under control. Hey, you know what? I didn't even talk about magnesium. Magnesium, it's so key. Only 0.1% of your body is magnesium, but only about 30% of Americans get sufficient magnesium in their diet. Magnesium, if you lack it, you have an increased risk of a stroke. Your blood pressure goes up. Your blood sugar goes up because your body requires magnesium to control your blood sugar. And your body requires magnesium to activate vitamin D, which is needed by the immune system and your bones. The body requires magnesium to activate melatonin. Melatonin is needed for the immune system and to build bone and help with digestive health and even help with GERD and, of course, to help you sleep at night. So magnesium is super key. It's super key to bone health. Only a tiny percentage of your bone is magnesium, but if you lack magnesium in your bone, well, your bone crystals enlarge and your bone becomes more friable. In other words, it's easier to break it. Your bones weaken. So there's so many different things. And then there's microminerals like selenium. Selenium's needed for detoxifying the liver. Selenium's needed to remove all kinds of toxins from the body, but it's also needed for the health of the heart. It's also needed for your eyes. It's also needed for the health of your liver, and it's needed to protect you from all cancers. So this is basically what makes you. And then there's very, very trace amounts of other elements. Like less than 1% of the body includes things like the selenium and vanadium and chromium. Vanadium and chromium needed to control your blood sugar. So diet, really important. You have to get your calcium to function. You have to get your magnesium to function. You have to get your potassium to function. You have to get your protein to make collagen because you're made out of that. I mean, it's so key. Thank you for tuning in to today's Invite Health podcast episode. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. Hope to see you next time on another episode of the Invite Health podcast. Thank you so much for listening.